all living in a world gone geek. It's time to geek hard or go home. The podcast is real. Here's your host, Grounded Geek.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It is now time for the podcast is real. I am Jeff, also known as Grounded Geek, and we are so excited to have another show for you here Sunday night, 7 p.m. We're here every week, so we hope that you've added it to your schedule, and then we drop as a podcast the next day. So if you are watching us now, we appreciate it, and maybe you're one of our podcast audience. A lot of people do that. Welcome, podcast audience. We try to describe some things if we show them on screen, because we always show stuff on screen. We don't want to leave you out, podcast audience. So we'll try to do our best to describe it. But if you ever want to see specifically exactly what we're doing, we're on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook every week right here doing this. But I don't do it alone. Obviously, I have some cohorts. Let's introduce one of them now. Utah, welcome to the show.
Hey, greetings, programs.
And what are we playing with today?
Well, yes,
That looks like Netflix logo on that paper of some sort.
Correct. This tissue paper does have the Netflix.
This is me describing what's on
That's right.
the picture. They're picturing it in their mind right now because I was so vivid.
He holds tissue paper with the Netflix logo on it.
You do it so much better. You should do that.
My friends from Netflix decided to send these to me after I paid them, of course.
Well, that's
So kind of them, right?
yeah. I can tell from the top what it is.
But you can see we have some Squid Game Funko Pops.
That's very cool. So
Here's
that's
the
circle
masked
guy.
worker, the circle guy, and
Yeah.
then
How many did you get?
I got 3. I didn't want to buy all of them because there are actually quite a few, and I don't have a lot of space in my attic.
Sure.
And so the second one is player 456, Ji-hoon,
All right.
the main character from Squid Game. And then arguably my favorite character from the Squid Game series, player 67, Cybok.
Yes. Agreed.
She made me cry
Yeah.
so much.
Oh my gosh, what a great character! That
But
show was so
yes.
great. And
Amazing
we've
show.
got an official announcement of season 2. They actually put a
Yes, it's
an
actually
image up
official.
there. So I can't
Yes.
wait to find out what they're going to do.
Oh, who knows what they're going to do, but
The
I'm
game
excited.
is not over.
No, not at all. So,
So-
thank you to my friends at Netflix for sending me these that I paid for.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're thanking you for.
I'm sure they're thanking me for paying for that.
Sure, right? Yeah, I've seen some of those. I've been kind of tempted to get those myself, but you know me. I've said for anybody who knows me very closely, I'm not a pop Funko collector. Like I've decided I don't want to be, because if I do, it'll get out of hand.
It's going to be
So-
like Pokemon. You're going to want
Yep.
you're going to want them all.
And so I decided it's like there are specific characters or movies that I'll try to get, and then that's it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
That's what
I
I'm
draw
trying to
the
do
line.
too.
and
Both
so
you got her freckles. The
obviously I've
freckles
got.
and-
Oh, that's cool. Obviously I've got Bill and Ted back here.
Sure.
The Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
I don't even
You
remember
know-
who else.
As soon
Hellboy.
as-
I've got the Tick.
Nice. I forgot about the
yeah.
tick.
So I'll
don't
probably
they have
get
it
Marty and Doc Brown.
right? You're going to have to get Die Hard when that comes out.
What do I've got? I have. Did I not mention Die Hard first? How did
You,
that
you
happen?
did not mention Die
I
Hard
sure
first.
didn't. Die Hard. I have all 4 of the Die Hard ones.
I was going to say, as soon as that came out, I'm like,
Yeah, same. I didn't get them all at once. I got them piecemeal, and as I could find them discounted at conventions and various things. But
sure, of
I
course.
do have all 4 now. Al Powell was actually the hardest one to get.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's carrying a bunch of Twinkies. I don't know
He's
if
got
you've seen
Twinkies
it.
though, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny. But yeah, Die Hard, obviously my favorite movie. Which actually brings me to some pop culture news of the week that is actually kind of sad.
Kind of sad.
But I
Yes.
feel like we should talk about it, especially since I talk about Bruce Willis almost every show.
Hey, can you
um,
put yourself back on the screen?
Oh yeah, it's just you on the screen.
Because it's
Sorry.
just me right now, and I feel like you need to be. There you are.
See,
Hi.
the podcast.
The
family,
podcast would have never known.
They had no idea that it was just you on the screen all that time. So thanks for calling me out to the podcast viewers. You could have put that in the private chat, and I would have just switched it.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Or I could have done like hand signals or something,
Right?
right?
Anyway, again, technical. That isn't even a technical difficulty. That's
No,
a
not
just brain difficulty. No, I'm a huge fan of Bruce Willis. Love Bruce Willis ever since Moonlighting. I have followed this guy's career, watched every movie. Probably one of the few people who thinks Hudson Hawk is a
Uh,
fantastic movie.
one of the two.
Yeah, few. I said the few. One of the few. There's
Okay,
very
all right.
few people in that crowd, but I
They
enjoyed
just
it. I thought it was
they
lark.
just don't understand it. They
Yeah,
just don't
it's
understand it.
just a lark. It's not supposed to be serious. It's a good, silly time,
Oh,
and
it's hilarious.
I love. Bruce Willis could sit and crack wise about names in the phone book for 2 hours, and I
And
would
you'd
just
watch it.
oh sure I would. I would be there. But no, the news this week that he is retiring from acting because he has been diagnosed with aphasia,
Yeah.
which affects the ability to speak and even understand spoken language as well. So really, really sad, obviously. And the family said that it's getting worse. And so this is something that he doesn't want to do in the public eye. And I totally respect that, I
Yeah.
guess.
Can't blame
But
him.
it is
Totally.
sad because again, the Razzies actually kind of made fun of him because he made 8 movies that came out last year.
Oh,
So
that's
they
right.
gave him his own category, and it was
Right.
the worst Bruce Willis performance in a movie. And not knowing, obviously, that he has been
That he's
dealing
been
with this for a while,
Right.
and because some directors have said that they've noticed that he's having some
Oh.
trouble. I just read that the other day. So I was
Okay.
it's one of those things, and I don't want to speculate because we just don't know. And it's the family's business. It's private, and I'm not going to speculate. But I do know, like, there's several different forms of aphasia, and if
Right.
you can after a stroke, it's fairly common,
It's possible.
and
Right.
typically that type is treatable. Like they eventually with some speech
You can
therapy,
sort of like retrain.
yeah, you can kind of retrain. So, but the way they're talking about it and the way they're describing it and how they've noticed it for a while, that
It
would have been
sounds-
a little more obvious if it was a stroke. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of shocking, and yeah, I'm sad about it, and I just wanted to say that and lift one up for Bruce tonight. I got my A&W sugar-free root beer. Wish him the best. It's heartbreaking that we won't see any more movies, but what a legacy of fun, adventure, and sarcasm we have from that man. I'm just glad to have watched him do this for so long.
Right. Don't be sad that it's ending. Be happy
Yeah.
that it happened.
Exactly.
And yeah, he does have a legacy. I mean, Die Hard pretty much changed I guess it kind of created a genre, right? But
Sure
it
did.
changed action movies after
100%.
Die Hard. The whole structure of action movies changed. And
Well, how many times after Die Hard came out did someone describe another movie as Die Hard on a plane?
boat, on a
Die Hard
right.
on a boat, yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were trying to capture that magic that he had, and
Yep.
it's just so good. And it wasn't just him in that movie, obviously.
Sure.
I mean, you've got one of the greatest actors of a
Alan
generation,
Rickman.
yeah, as the villain. And at that time, he was virtually unknown in Hollywood. He was
What
more
a
of a theater
breakout
actor.
role. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just
Man.
I mean, immediately one of the greatest villains
Yeah.
on screen, in my opinion.
Totally.
Anyway, I digress, but I just want to say it.
No, we should have pointed out. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be sad. I am going to do a Bruce marathon over the next few weeks. Just kind of watch a movie a day, just to kind of remember. Yeah, I'll probably start with Hudson Hawk.
Well, don't skip the G.I. Joes.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah. Was he in more than one?
Oh, he might have been only in the one.
Maybe. Well,
No, I
if he's in
think
more
he was
than
in
one,
two.
then I missed one, and that's not good. So I better go.
I feel like he was in 2. Weren't there 3 of them? He was in this. Maybe not.
Yeah, I didn't watch them all, so I can't be. I watched one with him in it. So if there's 2, then I missed out. And that's not unusual that I would have missed out on a third GI Joe movie.
Yeah,
Even
I
with,
think-
even
I
with
feel like
Bruce
a lot
Willis-
of people. I feel
even
like a
with
lot
Bruce
of people
Willis,
miss
I
out.
don't necessarily isn't an immediate yeah, I'm gonna watch it. Like I didn't see all 8 of the movies he put out last year. But in regards to that, the Razzies, I don't know if you heard, they actually rescinded that award.
Did they?
Felt,
Okay,
yeah, they
well,
felt
that
kind
was-
of bad about it.
Sure.
I think they should have just made it the worst Bruce Willis movie of 2021. Because that could have been,
Right.
I mean, there's any number of reasons that a movie is bad. And let's face it, some of them weren't great. I mean, I think even Bruce would own up to that.
Right. What
Some of
was
them
some?
weren't the best,
What,
but he put in the work
he put in the
it was
work.
Bruce. And
Right.
so that's who he was in every one of the movies. So it wasn't his fault if the writing was bad or whatever. So,
Right. What was the one he
um,
was in with Luke Wilson?
yeah,
The
Gasoline
most
Alley. We
recent
gave
one,
it away.
Gasoline
We gave it
Alley.
away
Yeah.
like two or
2 weeks
three
ago.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
Gasoline
I
Alley.
watched that one. Yeah. And yeah, it was different. And he's not in it a ton. But and I think that was the case with most of these,
Right.
that he signed up to do all these in a short amount of time, the least amount of time on set for a singular amount of money. And then obviously I think he was planning for retirement.
Kind of in preparation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right. Well, speaking of giving away movies, we gave away Gasoline
Hey.
Alley. We've given away digital copies of Scream. We're back with more copies of Scream. Only now it's actual Blu-ray copies of Scream. I went like
Physical.
this. I made
went like-
a square.
He made a rectangle square out of his.
my fingers
Yeah.
because I don't have one to hold up and demonstrate. But everyone knows what a Blu-ray looks like, right? And then just imagine the Scream poster on the Blu-ray. That's
of
what
Scream.
that's what I'm holding up. The new Scream, the new one.
The latest Scream.
Yes, which is named the same as the first one, so as to not confuse
So-
anyone.
Scream 2022.
Yeah.
Scream 22? No, because then that would imply that there were
There's
21
21 previous.
sequels.
There almost were. No.
No.
But yeah, we're giving away the all-new Scream movie on 4K Ultra HD and Blu-ray. It's coming out. We're giving away the Blu-ray copy of that, starring Nev Campbell, Nev Campbell. I already blew it. I'm gonna start over. Paramount wants me to do this right, so I'm gonna do it right. Own the all-new Scream movie on 4K Ultra HD and Blu-ray, starring Nev Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox. Scream is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Own it today and get killer bonus content, including interviews with the cast, deleted scenes, and much more, directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. I should have read this before. Sorry. If I butchered their names, I feel so terrible. They will never be on our show. Rated R from Paramount Pictures. I got to tell you, this was a good movie. It was actually, I mean,
I still
if
have to see it.
If you like the Scream movies at all, you will like this one. It is
Good.
It's just as meta. I thought it was at least as good as the second one. You know what I mean? Now the jokes are that the movies have been out forever and that the killer is coming back in a revival or they call it a requel.
A requel? Nice.
Yeah. And so
It's like
that's
Screamception.
why it's all happened again. It is. And that's what, if you've watched the movie, I mean, the first one is like a straight up horror movie. And then the
Right.
second one was about the making of a movie about what
the
happened
events
in
of the
Woodsboro.
first movie. Yeah.
And then it just keeps like snowballing in meta humor from there. Which is what I think is genius about that whole series, even though
Absolutely.
they got a little wacky towards the last couple. But this one I thought was a great way to come back into it. It was great to see the original cast
I was
up
about to
there,
say. Yeah.
except for the ones that are dead. The
Well,
ones that
you
are still
know.
alive from the original cast were dead in the movie, by the way. I don't mean to say that.
Oh, yeah,
some of
please,
these
yes.
characters have passed
You
away.
need to specify. Yeah.
Yes. But anyway, we're going to give away a copy of that. And here's what I need you to do. So I'm tying this into the fact we have a new website. I talked about that on our new show, which we aired on Wednesday, the Shawarma Shack. You should check that out on podcast right now.
Good
And yeah, the the website. we got a new website. It's great. So we're not using SpeakPipe anymore. There's actually a little chat button right on our website that you can leave us a message on. So you can go there, just pretend like we're a radio show. This is you calling in. You go there,
Right.
click that little chat icon, and record yourself saying the answer to this week's movie quote of the week. Okay. Normally I would play a movie quote. We're not going to do that this time. Make you do a little work for this one. So go to our website, worldgonegeek.com, click the little chat icon, and tell me Randy Meek's 3 rules for surviving a horror movie from the first movie. The three rules. I think there were more rules down the road, but
I think they added a couple, but the original
from the
first
original
three.
that Randy Meeks tells everybody. Leave those on that and make sure that you say your name. Obviously, if you can pronounce it for me, that would be great, because then I would be not butcher it on the air like I might have done to
Jeff, how
directors
else
of
are
that
they going to
movie.
leave their name on an audio?
I know. I mean, well, they type it in. When you leave a message,
I
you have
got
to
you.
type it
Okay,
in.
all right.
So I want them to also say it on the recording.
I got you.
if they would.
Okay.
That would be nice.
All right.
And then you'll be in the drawing, and next week we'll give away those Blu-rays.
Nice.
A few people, probably 3. That would be cool.
That'd be great. 3 people, 3 rules.
That's right. There you go. But you still have to do all 3 to win.
You have to do all 3 to win, right? Okay.
So go to our.
I'll do that right now as you're introducing our guest.
Okay, you do this every time. You're not eligible. All right. So that's what's happening with our. Plus, you get a chance to see our new website, which I'm very excited about.
It's very nice. It's very nice.
It's very nice. And before we are going to get to the guest soon, before we do, I do want to just remind everybody that we do have a new show. I talked about it, just kind of threw it out there. The Shawarma Shack is on Wednesday nights, where we recap the Marvel Cinematic Universe events of the day. Right now, that would be Moon Knight that's going on. So Moon Knight comes out on Wednesday. Watch it, then join us at 9:15 p.m. and we will spoil the heck out of it and talk about how cool it was. So obviously watch it first. And if you don't want to be spoiled, watch it whenever you want and catch it on a replay on YouTube or your favorite podcast player. There you go. That's the pitch.
Indeed.
All right.
Nice pitch.
I went way longer than I said, than I told our guest that we would. And so,
it wouldn't be World Gone Geek.
Let's bring him on, right? Yes, let's do it. So today we have a great guest. He is a writer. He has written in tons of publications about some of the most famous pop culture icons that you can name. He is also written for Disney, for the Cars comic book, which is kind of awesome. And most recently, he has published the James Bond Lexicon. And with the 60th anniversary, we would just figured we had to talk to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Allan J. Porter. We appreciate you coming.
Thanks, guys. Great to be on the show.
Looking
forward to the conversation.
Oh, we are too. I'm so excited. I have to admit, I haven't read the book yet. Usually I try to read some of the book before a guest comes on so that I can speak intelligently about it. I did look at some of the the excerpts and things like that. And this is a book that goes super in depth on James Bond. And I want to get into that. But before we do, we want to get to know Allan J. Porter. We want to know who you are. So tell us a little bit about kind of how you got into writing. Obviously, you're into some of these things we geek out about. You are
I am a fully fledged geek. Yes.
There you go. So we want to know, like, how did that happen? What is your earliest memory of, like, oh, you know what? I think I'm a geek.
I think I've always been a geek. I think my dad was a geek. I don't know. I grew up in a house that was always full of comic books, the UK, British comics, things like the Eagle. My dad was a subscriber to the Eagle comic from the 50s.
Oh, nice.
From the first issue. So when I was growing up, there was always the Eagle in the house. My parents bought me comics every week. There was always science fiction stuff around the house. So, British of a certain age, my first Doctor was the first Doctor. So I've been with Doctor Who literally from the beginning.
Nice.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's just always been part of my life. And then Bond sort of fell into my life when I was probably 6 or 7 years old. And it's been part of my life around the same time, mid-60s. They say it's the 3 Bs, Batman, Bond, and the Beatles. Look behind me, you can see the third one on the wall. So the Beatles has always been a big... So, yeah, just that sort of geek trifecta has always been part of my life. And it sort of grew from there. And then, Star Trek came along and all those the Jerry Anderson stuff. Grew up on all the Jerry Anderson shows. And then, all the great British science fiction stuff. And all the stuff in the theater, and then moved to the States about 25 years ago. And it was like, oh, there's this whole other culture to start absorbing. So getting into that. So yeah, I've just been a fully fledged geek pretty much since I could, turn on a TV. So
that's
nice.
fun. That's actually fascinating to me that you when you came to America, you realized there's a whole nother geek culture, because I remember as a kid discovering that the UK had this great geek culture, and I was jealous of that. And I was like, they've got Doctor Who, they've got
Thunderbirds.
There was even some of the best sitcoms ever.
Oh yeah, the American TV stole all the best. The ones that everybody reckons are classic American sitcoms are all stolen from the UK.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the
Yeah.
only one that they did right or did well and different was The Office. Like they took their own direction
Yeah,
with
but
that.
it's still
and that
from
was
the UK.
successful.
It's still
No,
stolen from
100%. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
A lot of the
yeah.
other ones were terrible. Like I don't know if you know, like I was a huge fan as a kid. Our PBS channel would rerun these all the time, and they would have a marathon every time there was a telethon going on.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And that was Faulty Towers with John
Alton
Cleese.
Towers is a
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I never laughed so hard in my life as a kid watching this show over and over again. Every time it was on, I had to catch it. So funny. Same with Monty Python. They showed those. Mr.
Indeed.
Bean, all of these things. I'm like, nobody is funnier than the British. I mean, it's just that's the case, right? I don't know how they do it.
It's in our
But they're
DNA.
just funnier than us. They just are.
Yeah.
And but we tried a Faulty Towers. I don't know if do you remember?
Yeah.
It was
Yes.
called Royal
Royal
something or other. John Larroquette was supposed to be John Cleese.
He was the John Cleese character.
I think it lasted like 2 episodes. And I watched it immediately because I'm like, oh,
Right.
Faulty Towers in America.
Right.
Let's see. And as soon as it's going, I'm like, this is the worst thing I've
Oh,
ever
it's
seen
horrible.
in my life.
Well,
Like we just can't do it. Not
And I
that
was-
type of humor. Like
No,
we have
it's-
our own
Yeah, but
style.
even things like All in the Family, which is an American classic, is based on a British.
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Same
Yeah, a
with
lot of
Friends,
people
right?
don't know
Wasn't,
that.
Yeah.
wasn't
yeah.
Friends based on a British
Yeah.
No,
sitcom
I don't
too?
think so. But like
I thought it
going
was.
back to the 70s, things like Three's Company. That's
Three's
a
Company
British,
also
a
from yeah.
British show. So
Friends actually.
Sanford and
now-
Sons is a British show based on a British show. Actually,
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Almost
wow.
word for word. Some of the episodes are literal word for word transcriptions of the British
Wow.
show. So
Wow.
I'm going to look that up. That was
So-
one thing I found interesting was when they transplanted The Office. Like the first episode of the American version was basically just a verbatim
yeah,
recreation of the first episode of the British Office.
Right.
And I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope they don't do this a lot because it just doesn't work. And I'm
Yeah.
glad
So-
that they went in a different direction that they did because I don't think it would have
but to
lasted
give
so
kudos the other way, I also grew up in the UK. Watching Star Trek, Man from
Yeah.
Uncle, Mission Impossible. All those great adventure shows, $6 Million Man, and all that that we grew up watching in the UK. But what we did was we watched the American ones. You didn't try and actually recreate them, which I think was
Right.
was
Which
the
makes
big
more
pro-
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know why we have a habit of doing that. And the Friends thing, I remember there was something. It was based on a British show, which probably is not it, or it was the first time that a British show actually kind of took that inspiration.
Took the inspiration
I think
from
it was
American
like
show.
it might
there was a
be,
show
yeah.
called Coupling or something like that.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
a couple
yes,
of-
okay.
yeah, that's slightly different. Yeah.
Vaguely, yeah, that might not even be the one. It's just
No,
vaguely. It
the
was around
Americans
that
did a
time.
version of Coupling, so as well.
Okay, so then it wasn't
Gotcha.
that. But I do remember that the American version of that. Yeah, that was short lived.
And if you're a Doctor Who fan, Coupling was written by Stephen Moffat. So
no way,
Mr.
Yeah.
Moffat.
I'm gonna have to check it out now.
I believe it was Stephen Moffat. Yeah. So
That's great. I had no idea we were going to talk about like British television, but I'm glad we are because I love that, and I love that you said that you've been watching The Doctor since the first Doctor. I think that's fantastic. Baker was my first Doctor, and
same here.
same thing on PBS. I would watch it.
I will
every
say,
time.
I know chronologically, and because my parents had told me that I did start watching it with the William Hartnell one, but I will say the first one I really remember is the Patrick Troughton story.
Okay.
That's the first one I have really clear memories of watching, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the newer seasons? Like,
I actually haven't. I've only watched a couple of episodes of the last season. Was it 13? These new season numbers blow my mind.
Yeah,
because,
it's
of the Jodie Whittaker one. I watched the first season. I like Jodie. I think she's doing a good job. I wasn't that impressed by some of the stories that they told.
Yeah, that's
Or
my
the
favorite
direction.
too.
I haven't seen this. I haven't seen her second season yet, but bar 2 episodes, I think. So
is that the one?
I must admit, I tend to put Doctor Who episodes on my iPad when I'm traveling. I'm on the plane,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
and I'm sort of dipping in and out of a lot of the David Tennant and Matt Smith ones at the moment.
Yeah.
Some of the classic ones. I
Yes.
watched Midnight, flying back from our joint head office last week. I watched. I think I watched Midnight, which was really cool. It's a really cool horror episode with David Tennant and Catherine Tate. I thought that was really good. So I like some of the modern stuff, but I'm a classic Whovian at heart, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was curious about, since you kind of grew up with the originals, like what you thought of the kind of the reboot that occurred when Christopher Eccleston.
I thought it was
took
great.
over.
the modern Who,
yeah. Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant were great. Matt Smith, most of his stuff I liked. Peter Capaldi, again, I think was underserved by the writing, and I think
Absolutely.
same thing is happening with Jodie Whittaker. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
And
really,
so
really
the
love
next
Peter
season,
Capaldi.
though, it's back to
Russell T Davis is
Yeah, it's
taking
coming
RTD's
back, right?
back. Yeah, RTD's back. So we'll see how
it
that
should
goes.
be good again.
Hopefully, yeah.
Well, I'm
I mean,
curious.
I feel like we got to give Jodie a couple of like legitimately really well-written seasons before we cast any kind of judgments on her, because I think she's great. It's hard to it's hard to really shine when some of the stories. And this last season, I think that's the one that's like the whole season is like one story.
One big arc.
Is it? Okay. I guess I haven't. So maybe I'm 2 seasons behind. I don't know.
And I might be wrong. It might be the one before. I can't remember. But whatever it was, I hated it. Like I just did not like any of it. I was like, this is not good enough for Doctor Who. But some of the other ones, I mean, I thought were fine. Some more individual, the more classic Who type episodes with her.
Yeah, I must admit, I always like the historical ones. I like the ones when they go back and sort of at some point in history, more than the pure science fiction ones, really. But at the time, I think I've sort of gravitated more to the historical stories.
I gotcha. So tell us a little bit about your how you got started.
Oh yeah, you asked me how I got started writing. Yeah, we went way off tangent on that.
We do that all the time. It's totally fine.
Happens.
No,
that's our MO.
Right, exactly.
I started writing basically because they told me at school I couldn't.
Oh, nice.
I can't spell. I will be completely honest. I've told everybody this. I literally cannot spell. I am a really bad speller, and I really needed the advent. And I was told at school. I always wanted to write stories. I wrote stories when I was at school, pretty much from the age of about 8 onwards. But they were always horribly spelt and mangled. And the English teachers always used to despair of me. And I said I wanted to be a writer. And they were like, no, you know about mechanical things. Go be an engineer. So they sort of pushed me in that thing. So some of my... and then I found out that I was like, well, maybe I could combine those and find an engineering job where they need writing. And I was told there's no job in the world that combines engineering and writing. So my first job actually out of once I graduated college was as a technical writer. No job where you can combine engineering and technology. Writing.
Right.
So,
there you go. Yeah.
I was a tech writer on Concorde. That was actually my first job as a tech writer on Concorde, which was a pretty cool way to start a career. But of course, by that time, computers were coming on, and they had this magical thing called a spell checker.
Hey.
So I started writing, and my wife very kindly signed me up for one of these. If you're not published by the end of this course, we will refund your scholarship, your money type courses. And by the end of I got to the end of the first module, I'd already sold 2 magazine articles.
Nice.
So that was I was in my early 30s then, and I've been pretty much writing since then. I've been, magazine articles, and then that grew into non-fiction books, and then started doing short stories and novellas. So at the moment, I sort of mix between short stories, novellas, comics, and non-fiction, mainly geek-driven non-fiction projects. So so I've been pretty much writing steadily for 30 years now, maybe. So I just gave my age away there. If anybody wants to very quickly do the math.
We're not. You're bad at spelling. We're bad at math. So you're
okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all good.
I noticed that from as far as short stories go, that you have written a couple in Sherlock Holmes consulting detective volumes. Tell me about how that came about and what it was like writing, basically, the greatest detective in the history of literature.
So I sold a couple of short stories to a publisher that does new Pulp series, a couple of noir detective stories. And they were starting off this new series of Sherlock Holmes consulting detectives. And I pitched an idea, and the editor came back and said, yeah, great. Let's go for it. And it was one of those things that I sort of closed the email and sort of jumped up and down and ran around my office and said, I'm going to write Sherlock Holmes. That's awesome. And then I stopped and I'm like, oh shit, I have to write Sherlock Holmes.
Right.
And it is. It's like, how do you come up with something worthy of Holmes? It can't just be a standard like detective story like I write for a 1930s gumshoe in New York. It has to be something special. And I was really struggling with it. And I was on a business trip. Where was it? It was I was going to an event in Florida, and I was getting off the plane in Orlando. And I'm walking through the airport, and there's an airport bookstore. So I have to walk through the airport bookstore. And right on an end cap was a book about the greatest jewel robbery in history that took place in the late 1800s. And as soon as I opened the flyleaf and read it, I'm like, this is it. This is my home story. And that's what I've done with I've had 2 published so far. I've got another one that's partly written. And I got others in the back of my head. But what I tend to do is find stories that are real crime stories, and then think, how would Holmes attack that case, and then twist them so they become a sort of a Holmesian worthy case. And again, I think it's part of my love of history. I was just like digging in and doing the research and the stuff that I found out about it. So yes.
I love that.
So basically, that's what I do. Is all my home stories are actually based on true crimes from around the late 1800s, early 1900s that I find out about.
Oh, how
yeah,
cool.
I love that kind of stuff when like a fictional character interacts with real history, and like how would they deal with it? Like even I don't know if you even the Batman Arkham by Gaslight. I don't know if you've read.
Oh
that.
yeah, the Elseworlds. Yeah.
Those I love. There's alternate histories with Jack the Ripper.
I love
with
those.
Jack the Ripper. Yeah,
I love those Elseworlds books as they used to call them. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, to take on to see what Holmes would do in those situations. I mean I would imagine that's quite a daunting task, because he's I've always loved Sherlock Holmes, but I don't think I could write anything because I know that I am not nearly as smart as he is. So could I do his even do it justice? Did you have any imposter syndrome?
There was that. And the thing is, it wasn't, as I said, I started off with like one thing, but then other things would come into it. So just give an example of another scene. My wife and I went out for a dinner in a restaurant here in Austin, Texas, and we noticed that the forks were laid on the table in a particular way. And I said to the waiter, "Why are the forks like that?" And he was like, "Oh, well, they used to be that way because they used to have the crest of the hotel on them, but people would then steal them. But we still have them laid in that way because it's like the tradition of the hotel, even though they're just normal forks now." And I was like, And that found its way into the Sherlock Holmes thing, because that's the sort of thing that Holmes would notice is that the cutlery would have had a certain crest on it and that it would be laid a particular way and stuff. And so I think the thing I found was I didn't position myself as the smartest guy in the room, but I do find when I'm working on Holmes, I get way more observant. I
that
sort
makes
of get
sense.
into his mindset when we're out anywhere, I'm sort of picking up details that I wouldn't probably normally notice. So
I love that. That's fascinating.
That's so cool. Did you have to deal with with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's family or estate?
No, because it's public domain here in the US. So there was a whole court case about that, which is what allowed them to start this series of consulting detectives.
Now,
that's true, right? There was a court case with Enola Holmes, that Netflix series.
Yeah. It was, but
even prior to that, there was a whole.
Even prior, there was still other.
Yeah.
But they were able to do it, or the gist of the court case with Enola Holmes was that they depicted Sherlock, his emotional relationships with family and stuff, and that was the stuff that isn't in public domain yet. Like when those books I guess started to deal more with his
those were the later books,
his psyche and his friendships.
But the actual character of Sherlock Holmes and the basic stuff is in the public domain.
Is now public domain. Right.
So they were just mad about that aspect of it being Henry Cavill showing love
emotion.
for his sister.
Being human.
They're like that part is not. That's in the newer stories that are not public domain yet.
That's not public domain yet.
The Conan Doyle estate have always had a love-hate relationship with the public, I think. So.
Yeah, I guess so.
So you've also written some nonfiction, as we said, about some cool pop culture things. You've got Star Trek, a comics history.
Yeah.
And an unauthorized Batman collector's guide, which both of those sound interesting to me.
Those sound incredible.
Yeah. How did the Star Trek comics history come about, and like kind of what?
Well, Star Trek comes out of the James Bond. So let me take it back. So originally, talking about my geek stuff, I was a complete Batman geek. I used to have a massive Batman collection. And I couldn't find a guide. It was like if you wanted guides to the Batman collectibles, you had to buy like a comic book guide, a wristwatch guide, a toy guide, all these separate, And it's like somebody should do a guide that brings all the Batman stuff together. So I was like, So I pitched it, and a publisher literally picked it up. I literally got a phone call the next day from the publisher saying, we want to do this. And I was like, that ended up being my first book. And I was like, all these people who say it's really difficult to get a book deal, I don't know what they're talking about. And that was a project I wish I'd never done in some senses, because talking about, we worked on it for 3 years. We kept DC and Warner Brothers informed every step of the way until they saw a draft of what the book was going to look like. And then they hit us with a cease and desist.
What?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
What?
And I ended up going backwards and forwards with their legal, and we got them down to, you must do these 7 things if you want to publish the book. Like, we couldn't have the Bat logo on the front cover. And I don't know if you can actually see it on the wall behind me, but if you actually... that's it up there.
Oh, there.
You see the
Bat
one. It's not the Bat logo. It's not like on the red front cover and stuff.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
And we had to have like copyright statements throughout, and there were certain design elements we couldn't use and things like that. So it became a really big headache. But that came out in '97. That came out, and of course, unfortunately, it came out around the time of Batman and Robin, which was probably not the best Batman movie.
That's bad timing. Yeah,
it was bad timing. And then it took me 7 years to get my next book out, which was the Beatles book. So much, but yeah, it is difficult to get a book deal. It does take a while. That taught me a lesson. But anyway, eventually, I was going to do this is a very long answer to your question. I was going to do I started doing research. I wanted to do a joint biography of the 2 men who co-created Batman, Bob Kane and Bill Finger.
Yeah.
And nobody would publish it. All I would get taken around was, we want to read the story, but I don't want to publish it. It's like too hot a potato legally. And so I was at San Diego Comic-Con, and I pitched it to the folks at a publisher called Hermes Press, and Dan, the publisher, we were chatting away, and he was another, I'd love to read it, don't want to publish it. And I'm sort of, my shoulders fell, because I'd heard that like 10 times that day. And he said, so what else have you got? And just off the top of my head, I said, how about a book about the history of James Bond in comics? And he went, yeah, that's exactly what he said. And then he followed it up with, well, send me a pitch. So I did, and he bought the book, and we wrote that book, and it came out. And it went really well. So the year after that, because we got to know each other and we both knew we were Trekkies, he said, how about doing a similar book on the history of Star Trek? And I said, well, I'm not that much of a Trekkie. And then I sat in my office and I looked around at the model of the Enterprise and the tribble on my desk. And thought, maybe
just
I am
one
that much of a
tribble,
Trekkie. So, we'll do it. So that's how that book came about. So, and my tagline for that was, I read 600 Star Trek comics, so you don't have to.
That's funny. I have a friend. He's been on our show.
Rich,
a while ago. Rich Handley.
Oh, I know. Yeah, Rich was. Yeah, I know Rich. He's a good buddy. Yes.
I was gonna say. I figure you guys have to cross paths.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This guy has written books.
Rich is actually very central to the story of the James Bond lexicon as well. So
really? I'm gonna have to ask him about that. Yeah, Rich was on our show. He and actually a good friend of mine wrote or edited together musings on monsters about the Paramount monsters,
classic monsters,
Godzilla, and all these different like monsters in books. And so we had him. And it was a Halloween episode, I think. Like
right,
it was
last year, 2 years ago. Anyway,
2 years ago.
But yeah, so Rich was on the show then,
Rich was instrumental in helping pull together all the stuff I needed for the Star Trek comics history.
That's fun. He's still writing about the comics, I think. Like he
Yeah.
I think he writes a regular article.
Yeah, he does a
has
regular thing.
Hero
feature.
Collector. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of fun. This isn't about Rich. We won't talk about him anymore. Just kidding.
He's catching up on Doctor Who. We can.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yes,
that's true. Yes. Yeah. So, well, I mean, I guess we gave a plug for Rich Handley. Check out Rich Handley as an author as well.
I guess he's just gonna have to come back on the show.
He will. Well, no, it's already planned. Next season, though.
Excellent.
Because we're all our guests are up, so we'll make it happen. So let's talk about the James Bond the comics one first of all, because I got to be honest, I've read a lot of comics. I was also a huge Batman fan, and then everything else was pretty much Marvel. Like Batman was my only DC, a little bit of Superman, but mostly Marvel stuff.
Batman. Yeah.
But I love Batman, just love him. But I don't remember any James Bond comic books. Like I don't remember ever seeing those or even having, because I feel like I would have liked to have read those. Like I like James Bond's
right.
Since I was a kid.
Okay, I'm going to get visual here. So here's the book.
Yeah, please do.
Oh,
James
look
Bond,
at that
the History
book.
of the Illustrated 007.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice
cover.
More original James Bond stories told in comics format than any other media.
I remember.
Kidding me.
Wasn't there like a weekly?
Fantastic.
I remember seeing as a kid a James Bond comic strip.
Right. So there was a James Bond comic strip in the Daily Express, the British newspaper, that ran for 25 years.
Okay.
Wow.
And they started off by adapting the Fleming stories, and then obviously ran out of Fleming stories, so started creating their own stories. So actually it's arguable as to which is the first non-Fleming Bond story, whether it's Colonel Sun, the continuation novel, or a comic strip called The Harpies. They came out within about 2 weeks of each other, so you can argue which one came first.
That's so funny. That.
That strip ran for 25 years. And then it was picked up and translated in a lot of countries, and then they started to do their own. From the mid-'80s onward, in Sweden, they did a whole series of original James Bond comics. Chile, would you believe, did a whole series in the 60s and 70s, where they not only adapted the movies, but created their own original Bond stories as well. And then they've been translated in pretty much every language that you can think of around the world. There's translations of the newspaper strips. Some places did unofficial adaptations of the movies in comic book format. So there are hundreds of James Bond stories in the comics format. But the US is a very interesting story because when Dr. No came out, Classics Illustrated adapted it in the UK. That was picked up and reprinted throughout Europe. Classics Illustrated in the US did not want to publish it. So DC got the license through I won't go into a long story, but basically it ended up at DC, who decided to take the Classics Illustrated story, take out all the Asian skin tones and make everybody white.
Oh, wow.
And then published it in in an issue of DC Showcase that came out 3 months before the movie actually opened here in the US.
Oh my gosh.
So it disappeared from the newsstands literally the month that the movie opened. And then DC held on to the license for like about 15 years on the basis that, well, we tried it in Showcase and it didn't sell, therefore James Bond doesn't sell. So through the height of all the Bond mania,
oh my gosh,
60s, DC was sat on the license and would not do anything with it.
And nobody else could do anything with it.
And nobody else could do anything with it because DC had it.
Oh my gosh.
And then in the 70s, Marvel picked it up. They did an adaptation of For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy. And then it went to... then there was an adaptation of License to Kill, which was done through Acme Press. And then it ended up at Dark Horse, and they did several short stories, miniseries, which were actually really good. And then it went to Topps, who did an adaptation of Goldeneye, which lasted one issue. It was meant to be a three-issue adaptation of Goldeneye. And after the first one, Eon Productions said, you can't do it anymore. It's too sexy. And it's like, have you watched your movie?
2 seconds. How can 2 seconds?
Yeah,
this is Bond.
Because somebody at Eon was like, comics are for kids. You can't have the sex in it. It's like, it's literally scene for scene what's in your movie.
Yeah.
So they would not actually allow any more James Bond, and that's as far as my book goes, because my book covers that period. And when I wrote the book, there hadn't been a new James Bond comic for like 10 years or so. But now, obviously, in the last several years, Dynamite Comics has the license, and they are doing amazing work. They're putting out some really great James Bond stories in comics format. And I've just noticed the sun is coming through my office window, and you're getting J.J. Abrams style.
We're getting lens flares.
So let me just go close the blinds. I'll be back.
Sure. That blows my mind, Utah. I guess I was just so laser focused on superheroes as a kid,
right? Well,
that I just never saw the James Bond on the shelf, because I would have read those.
Yeah, like I said, I remember seeing James Bond comic strips. I was totally unaware of any James Bond comic books. But then it also sounds like, because this would have been in the 70s, 80s. It sounds like there weren't high quality James Bond comic books anyway.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I would love to get my hands on one of those Dr. No's.
Yeah, right.
And I noticed that actually hasn't helped at all and has made things probably worse, but never mind. I have a round window at the top of the wall that doesn't have a blind on it, and the sun is coming right through that section. So
it's okay. We can pretend that like you're a James Bond villain, and that's
okay. I'm just in shadow now. So.
There you go. Yes.
Well, again, the bulk of our audience is the podcast listeners anyway.
Right.
So
okay,
he sits mysteriously in silhouette.
Thank you, Utah.
So yeah, I highly recommend the Dynamite comics.
I'm going to check that out for sure.
Now, are any of the Dynamite comics original stories? Are they based?
They are all original stories. They have various miniseries that run 4 to 6 issues, and they are contemporary Bond stories. I actually think the best version of a modern James Bond in any media, much better than the Daniel Craig movies. I think, in my personal opinion. And they also did a James Bond Origins 12-issue series, which basically is him as a young boy in the beginnings during World War II, that shows how he got involved with the Secret Service.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty cool.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to have to look that up. Just that the James Bond Origins sounds incredible to me.
So yeah, highly recommend those.
I'm actually looking at it now. I wanted to see, because I was curious, like, what does James Bond look like in the comics? Because they aren't basing them on any of the movie iterations.
No, well, but they are licensed by Ian Fleming Publications, so they're nothing to do with the movies.
Yeah.
So
he's just it looks like Bruce Wayne a little bit. In what I'm looking at right here. But yeah, that's cool. I'm just like I'm sitting here gobsmacked, because I love James Bond movies. And I would read this Dynamite comic in a heartbeat. I'm gonna have to see if it's on Comixology and see if I can. Yeah,
it is, because I actually read it digitally on Comixology, and then
there we go.
I buy checking that out. So
hey, and they're only 77 issues, so they're not so many that you can't catch up.
No.
Yeah, well, it is for me. I get so little time to read. I binge shows all day while I'm working, and that's the only way I can stay on top of stuff for this show. And then I try to read at night, and I get like 3 pages in, and I'm gone. So I'm currently reading Stephen King's Billy Summers. I'm maybe 50, 60 pages in, and that's been like 3 weeks worth of attention to it. So there you go. That's kind of how that's how my reading is going. I used to read so much, and now I wish I got to get back on that. That's cool. I'm going to get those. So then that went from talking just about the comics to this entire lexicon.
The lexicon,
right?
Yeah, tell us what can we find in that? Like, how extensive is this?
It is I'm going to get visual again here. Here we go.
Sure. Hold on, let me get you blown up.
There we go. It is.
Love it. Oh, look at that.
Thick.
That's a lot of stuff.
That is about 450 pages of the fictional world. It's an A to Z of the fictional worlds of James Bond in movies, novels, comics, TV, all the pros. So we cover every official James Bond story from 1953 to 2019. That's about 270, just over 270 James Bond stories that we catalogued and annotated. And it is an encyclopedia of the fictional worlds of Bond, so you won't find entries for Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Daniel Craig, etc. But if you want to know who Bond's interior decorator is, or who looks after his Bentley, or how many different types of champagne he's drunk, or how many women he's slept with, or the registration number of the various cars he's driven, it's all in there. So.
That's awesome.
Well, I'm already sold.
So it's I think there's about 5,000. Last time I did a quick count, I think it's about 5,000 entries in the book. And then for everything that's been published after December 2019, we have a companion website where we trying to keep up with all the new Bond stuff, like the new comics. There's a new novel coming out, and obviously No Time to Die as well. We're working on those. We've not got them up there yet. But,
No Time to Die.
Yeah. So everything. It's an ongoing, as well as the book, there is an ongoing web-based project around it as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And like I said, that's all because of Rich Handley. So you can blame him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, well, we will blame him.
Yeah.
I find it hilarious that is a connection. But then again, I was like, I bet he knows him.
Well, yeah, it was inspired by his Planet of the Apes. Lexicon.
Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah, he's done a lot. So, he and I have bonded over Dark Shadows. So I'm currently like 670 episodes through, which is more than halfway. Yeah.
So that's some of that American geek culture that I mentioned earlier on that I had no idea existed, and Dark Shadows was not a thing I'd ever heard of until we moved over here. So
have you seen it?
I dipped in and out of it. I really miss.
So
I think I'd like to sit down and give it a more concerted try, but as you said, there is so much to watch these days as a geek. Yeah. It's just impossible to keep up with everything. Never mind revisiting old stuff. So.
Right? It is true. It is it's true. It's a product of its time in America that is it's fascinating to watch for how bad it can be sometimes, but also how like kind of ingenious. Sometimes
that sounds just like Doctor Who, basically.
Yeah, moments of genius.
Yes, exactly.
And then I heard somebody, and I don't have, it's not my quote, so I'm gonna admit that. Somebody referred to it, and this is great. I wish I could remember who, so I could give them credit. But they referred to Dark Shadows as a show about a boom mic and the people who live in its shadow, or something like that. I'm sure I just butchered it, but that's hilarious. It's so funny how many times you see the shadow of the boom mic, or
the boom mic itself
walking into the scene and coming back out suddenly. Like, it's so poorly produced, but it has some really, really interesting stories occasionally in and out, that you'll find, and it's just really funny to watch, and just to see that period of time is just. It's fascinating. Anyway, so it's not about Dark Shadows. We'll have Rich on to talk about Dark Shadows.
We will.
But this being the 60th anniversary of the films of James Bond, I've been watching those since I was young. Now, my first James Bond film was actually Roger Moore. So that's when I was first kind of introduced to. My mom loved Roger Moore, and she loved Sean Connery too. How I didn't end up going to one of those, I don't know. But then when I saw that, I had to go back and watch other ones because I was so much fun watching Roger Moore as James Bond, and they're very different. They're different, very different.
They are very different in tone. Yes.
Well, they're all different, right?
Yeah. Each actor kind of brings a different Bond to the screen, and
very much so. Yeah.
Do you have everyone? Talks about. Do you have a favorite Bond?
I mean, my usual. I was going to say my usual answer is what you just said, that they all bring something to the part, because they do, and they all add something to the characters. So yeah, I have a favorite, but I don't think he's the best, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, sure.
So my favorite is Pierce Brosnan.
Okay.
I think he loved playing the part so much. He's very clear, and he could do. I mean, he looks amazing.
Right.
I think if you put all of the parameters for what James Bond should look like, an on-screen James Bond should look like, and you put it into an artificial intelligence machine learning algorithm, you get Pierce Brosnan.
Sure.
I think so, yeah.
And he clearly loved playing the part. I think he's unfortunately was not necessarily served by the best script again. I think he's generally the movies got slightly worse and worse each time. So he's my favorite because I think he really encompasses everything that Roger Moore did, a touch of the Lazenby stuff as well, and the Connery. He can do the dangerous stuff like Connery can. He moved well. He looked great. Was clearly having a ball playing the part. So yeah, Pierce is definitely my favorite. Timothy Dalton, I think, is the best in the fact that he's closest to Fleming's Bond.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
I would agree with that. Yeah,
so those are my usual two answers to that sort of question.
Sure.
I like that. Well, and it's also interesting that Pierce Brosnan was approached to play Bond so much earlier in his career, but he was contractually obligated to NBC, right?
There's a whole story around that,
right?
Yes.
And in all honesty, I feel like he was not ready to play Bond.
Yeah, the interesting thing is Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton were both approached a lot earlier too. Roger Moore was one of the original people under consideration, even before Connery, but he was tied up with the Saint and things.
I was going to say he was a Saint. So
yeah, he was the Saint. So when he actually took on Bond, he was actually older than the official 00 retirement age that Fleming actually said in the books.
Oh wow!
And when they were looking for Her Majesty's Secret Service after Connery had left, Timothy Dalton was approached, but he felt he was too young at that point to play the part. And they came back, and then when Roger Moore was doing his movie by movie one, at the end of every movie, he was like, "Well, that's it." They kept going back to Timothy Dalton, and they couldn't get the things to work. And then and then when the thing with Pierce Brosnan happened, they managed to rework the schedule so they could eventually get Timothy Dalton. So yeah, it was. They've all, I think, pretty much, other than Daniel Craig. I think Daniel Craig's the only one who was like hadn't been approached before,
right?
And then got the part. All the others have been approached at some point prior to them actually getting the role.
Interesting.
So
now I got the sense that the Craig films aren't amongst your favorites.
You read that unsubtle hint very well, yes.
And I know a lot of people's complaint is that he's very different from the Bond in the books. And he obviously, his looks, being blonde, people were like, a blonde James Bond.
No, it's not that.
Yeah, I know. So tell us, what is it about the Craig films that you don't like?
I will say Casino Royale is actually one of my all-time favorites. I think it's like number 2 on my list, or number 3.
Casino Royale is one of my favorites.
Casino Royale is absolutely brilliant. And I actually like Quantum of Solace as well. It works really well as an immediate follow-up to Casino Royale. So I have no real problem with those two. I think it's partly he plays him too much as a thug. He doesn't come. Bond is the movie Bond is a gentleman spy. He is not a gentleman spy. He's a blunt instrument, which is actually Fleming's. And a lot of the things that they say that Daniel Craig brought to the role, the physicality and the emotion. Well, Lazenby did the emotion and a bit of the physicality. Lazenby was a great fighter, and he did the emotional stuff. The realistic Bond who gets hurt and stuff. Dalton had done all that.
Yes.
So a lot of the stuff that they say Craig brought to the part, the others had already done. It's too much of like his dress sense is terrible. And then the whole thing with the movies where they actually tried to shoehorn a Marvel Universe type continuity into the stories as they were going along, which they clearly had not planned from the beginning, but they suddenly decided they were going to go do it because suddenly they got the rights to Spectre back.
That's right.
In the middle of it. So I tend to think of them as a 5-issue miniseries that sort of sits off to the side. You can sit and enjoy it. Has a great start, but sort of fades away quickly, and has a good ending. Has a good start, has a good ending, but it's a self-contained, its own little Daniel Craig universe, it's not my Bond. I know a lot of people like them, a lot of people love them. It's just not for me. I prefer a Bond who comes in, gets a briefing, goes and does his job, saves the world.
And then James Bond will return.
Bond is a plot device. If you read the books, you don't know much about James Bond personally. Mm-hmm. He's a plot device. He's something that you, as the viewer, should be able to put yourself in and want to be that character and drive through the movie. And when you get into the Craig movies, where you start getting all the backstory and stuff, he becomes too developed as a character to be a plot device that you as a viewer want to ride along with. You end up watching him, not going on the journey with him. And
I gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that does.
Yeah,
I don't like
character.
I don't like the Daniel Craig movies anymore. So no, I'm just kidding.
No, I think it's a great. I think you made a great metaphor in the fact that it is kind of a miniseries, because this is the first time where the Bond movies actually follow each other, and there's like this.
Well, it's actually not strictly
arc.
true, because actually, From Russia with Love is actually a immediate sequel to Dr. No.
Oh, okay.
They do actually mention there's others where
they do mention. You're right. They do
mention bridging stuff. So yeah,
right.
It's
and From Russia with Love was one of my favorites too. So.
Yeah, so there are other places where they've done that, but it was so shoehorned in on this one, and they clearly were going off in one direction, and they decided they were we've got this, we can now use it, and let's do it, and then look what Marvel's doing, and then it was like there was a natural end at the end of Spectre, but then. Daniel Craig comes back, and so I don't know. It's just all a mess. So I'd just like to parcel them up and look at them on their own. So personally,
yeah. Well, I mean, 60 years is a long time for movies to keep up for a franchise to stay alive.
Right. That's true.
I have been postulating on Twitter. Who do you? So obviously the big question is who's going to be the next Bond. Daniel Craig is done. Who's next? But I thought it would be fun, since Bond is 60, is what actor in their 60s would make a great 60-year-old Bond?
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, I think he could still do it.
There's only one answer to that. It's Pierce Brosnan.
Right?
I think he could still do it.
Have you seen his recent movies? I mean,
yeah, he's still got it.
Yeah,
he was not the first person to pop in my head, and he should have been. You're right. I don't know how old he is, but probably, yeah,
he's age appropriate.
60s, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
he still looks great.
Yeah.
So
I'd go for a movie with Pierce Brosnan being, a retired 007.
That's exactly that's why I was doing it. I'm like, okay.
Which apparently one of the early ones was meant to be one of the movies. I can't remember which one it was, and it's terrible off the top of my head. But one of the movies, I think it was one of the Pierce Brosnan ones, was actually meant to be. What am I doing? It was actually GoldenEye with Alex Trevelyan. The 006 was actually going to be played by Anthony Hopkins as
an
previous
007?
It was 006, but as a previous 00 who mentors Bond and teaches Bond and then betrays Bond.
That would have been fantastic.
But it ended up being Sean Bean instead. So
and they changed it around a little bit.
And they changed it around, but
did he die?
What, Sean Bean? Yeah, of course he did.
That's why I was just curious.
Right, he always
not
dies
until the end of the movie. So.
Oh, okay. Well, at least he made it that far. Like,
yeah.
I gotta say, GoldenEye, I think, is one of the more underrated Bond films.
It's one of my favorites. It's a top 5 for me.
I think GoldenEye was kind of the perfect device to bring Bond back after so many years.
Yes. Yeah.
And Pierce, I mean, he did so great in the role anyway. So.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right.
Wow, Anthony Hopkins.
Oh. That's interesting. Yeah, I would have loved that. So, what's your favorite Bond theme?
Ooh, favorite Bond theme. It's actually
on my list.
Well, it depends what you mean. You mean theme song?
Theme song,
yeah.
Theme song. It's actually Thunderball.
Oh,
okay.
Tom Jones.
Tom Jones. Yeah. I love the lyrics in that about Bond. He runs when others walk. Things like that.
That's true, yeah.
Oh, sorry, he walks when others run. He moves to walk. Blah, blah, blah. I said that and I've forgotten the lyrics. But I think the lyrics are great. And it's just a great performance. It's one I howl along to in the car. That and Live and Let Die are probably, depending on which day of the week you ask me, it's either that or Live and Let Die. So.
That's one of the most unique ones, I feel like. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I love Paul McCartney. I mean, how could it not be a good song? But I just, it's one of those that's like, this is James Bond, and then
it's not.
We're at a circus, and we're
and now it's a rock concert,
and then it's James Bond again. It was so funny, that mixture of music. It's just like jarring, the differences, but I love it because
it works really well.
It works really well.
Do you know the story behind when they brought that in the demo tape? So they got Paul McCartney to write the song, right? And he did a demo tape. Being Paul McCartney, his demo tape had like a 60-piece orchestra.
Of course,
and it was
right.
fully produced. And they bring the demo tape. So George Martin, who was doing the soundtrack, takes the tape and flies out to where they're filming, sits down with Cubby Broccoli and the producer and sort of plays the demo tape, and he listens to it, and then he goes, "Yeah, that's really good, but who are we going to get to sing it?"
Do we know what he said?
Oh, that's
George
amazing.
Martin just said, "It's Paul McCartney." Took the tape out and walked away. So,
Oh, that's amazing.
That's funny. Yeah, that's always been one of my favorites. I actually, one of my favorites is
I like the one for Casino Royale.
Casino Royale.
oh yeah, the Chris Cornell one. Yeah,
Chris
yeah,
Cornell. I thought
I
that was
love
really
that
well.
opening. Even the opening animation was amazing. I
Yeah,
really love
with
that
the playing
movie.
cards and
If
that,
I
yeah,
had to
that was a
pick
good
my
opening title,
favorite,
yeah.
I feel like even though it's, even though I really love Sean Connery's Bond, I really loved Roger Morris, because those are the ones, like I said, that I saw when I was young.
When you were
Those
a
are like
kid,
the
yeah.
nostalgic connections that I have, kind of like Tom Baker and Doctor Who, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm connected to those guys. I was still watching when Timothy Dalton. I never saw the George Lazenby when that
The best Bond film.
That's what everybody says, but it was.
Yeah, I would agree
when
with
it
that.
was
Yeah.
current, I hadn't seen it yet. Like
Right.
I never watched it. Timothy Dalton ones, I enjoyed those. But Casino Royale, I keep coming back to that movie as like probably my favorite Bond film. Like if I had to pick the one that I just want to, if I want to throw in a Bond film and watch one, you know what I mean, again and again, that's the one that comes to mind for me. And I don't know why. Part of it, I think, is that opening. It's so mesmerizing, and that song and that animation, and I love how tense they made that card game. when he's poisoned, and it's just, oh my gosh, it's just I love the pacing and the acting in that movie.
It's a really good movie. Yeah.
Well, just the whole opening sequence, right? I love how they set up them. Right, you go black and white. They're talking about his first.
So the pre-title sequence.
Yeah, the pre-title sequence. They're talking about his first kill and doing black and white. The fight in the bathroom. The very clever gun barrel sequence that wasn't at the beginning, but they stuck it in there in a nice clever way. And then the ending when he walks up and he says his name. Like
yeah.
I thought it was fun.
It's a really good one. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, the I don't remember where I was going with that.
We ended. We're asking about themes.
Right?
The songs,
and then Nobody Does It Better is just a really classic, nostalgic song for me too. I feel like.
I mean that's very indicative of the Roger Moore period. It's
I
like it.
That's the one I grew. That was my childhood.
That was your childhood.
I can't remember which movie that was from. All of a sudden.
I like the fact that the song comes up right as he's jumping off the ski cliff, and
it's the opening of this. Spy Who Loved Me, Bond 77.
Spy Who Loved Me. I think it was Spy Who Loved Me.
Yeah, and then you have the disco Bond 77 version of the Bond theme. So
that's right. Yes.
What's your favorite Bond theme, Utah?
Oh, that's tough. I have this thing for Goldfinger. And I feel like that's really a lot of nostalgia, just because that was the first Bond movie I remember actually seeing. And there's something about Shirley's vocals that is just
she's phenomenal.
really moving for. But yeah, I like Chris Cornell's song in Casino Royale. And then there were actually two songs from Tomorrow Never Dies. One that was Tomorrow Never Dies,
right, and
but
then
they
Surrender.
didn't. And then Surrender, right? And they actually wasn't one originally written for the
Surrender was originally written to be the theme, and he's actually, if you can hear it all the way through the soundtrack,
right?
And then the producers overruled David Arnold, the composer, and said you shall use this Sheryl Crow song, which he didn't like, but so
because I prefer Surrender over.
Surrender is way better. Yes,
right. And I was surprised. I remember being in the theater and hearing that song like over the credits. I'm like, where was this at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was designed to be at the beginning of the movie.
Right.
Like I said, you can hear it all the way through the soundtrack.
Yeah, it was.
The motif is there. Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Those are my songs.
And the Billie Eilish Phineas one just won the Oscar.
It won the
on
Oscar.
Sunday.
It did, yeah. The third Bond song in a row to win an Oscar, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so we're coming up on time, or actually over time. So I want to make sure to respect your time. But before we go, I mean, I feel like I already teased it. We talked about a 60-year-old Bond, and you had the genius answer that I can't believe I didn't think of. I don't know why. I think I've forgotten that Pierce Brosnan is still working. I don't know. I just haven't seen.
Really? Oh no, he's done a lot of really good thrillers and westerns.
Yeah, I just haven't seen any of them.
Stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. He's done some westerns. I love westerns, so I'll seek those out immediately. And we talked the favorite Bond theme. I feel like we still do need to kind of at least touch on who you think might be in the running for the next Bond.
So I have a double answer for that because it depends what sort of Bond they want.
Sure.
So if they want a more sort of more of a Pierce Brosnan-ish,
more suave
type, serious but can do the light stuff. But I think Aidan Turner is my go-to guy. Poldark is in the modern version.
Oh, okay.
Poldark.
Yeah. I've not watched that, but I know that show.
Yeah.
Looking at him now. Okay. Yeah.
And my real out of left field one is if they want to go more lighthearted, because we went serious, lighthearted, serious, lighthearted, serious. So I think we're due more of a lighthearted one. If they want to go really lighthearted, my guy is an actor called Mark Rowley, who is in the series The Last Kingdom, which is on Netflix, which is an awesome show, by the way. And he plays an Irish mercenary called Finian in that, but he's actually a Scottish actor. But I think he could do a light-hearted Bond really well.
Well, we've had a Scottish Bond before.
Well, I mean,
it looks like Aidan Turner is Irish. So I mean,
we've had Irish, we've had Welsh, we've had Scottish, we've had English, and we've had Australian. So
right. So kind of run the gamut there.
Yeah.
So
those are my two. But I think if you're going to go for somebody who may or may not get it, it's Aidan Turner. It will not be any of the famous names that you've heard, because they've never done that.
They've
never cast anybody who is already a lead actor in movies. They may be lead actors in TV, like Roger Moore and Pierce Brosnan.
Roger Moore, right.
But they have never cast anybody who was already a lead actor in movies.
Yeah.
So every time you hear the Tom Hiddleston, Idris Elba,
Henry Cavill.
Henry Cavill. I mean, Henry Cavill was second choice to Daniel Craig the last time round.
Right.
I think
so maybe that could still, because he was approached.
But he's already done Superman. He's Napoleon Solo. He's The Witcher.
Yeah.
So they won't go for somebody who's
Mission Impossible,
who's associated with another franchise. And then that way.
Gotcha.
So I think it's going to be somebody like, it may not be Aidan Turner, but I think it's going to be somebody like Aidan Turner who has a good, solid TV resume, but is not necessarily a known movie actor.
Right, and they
may have done small movie parts. Daniel Craig had done stuff in Tomb Raider and Layer Cake and stuff like that, but he wasn't.
I loved him in Layer Cake.
Yeah, he wasn't a movie star at that point. So
that was the first movie I remember. I mean, I had seen Tomb Raider, but I didn't remember Daniel
Craig.
Recognize
him.
You know what I mean?
I don't know. He put on an American accent on that one. So
and he was not really anybody super famous at the time. And when he was announced as James Bond, I'm like, who? So and I think that's what they're looking for, is somebody that you do that with.
Lesser known.
But then you see them and you're like, okay, I can see that.
yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's going to be, like I say, all the ones that you see in all the clickbait headlines. I don't think it's going to be any of those guys.
Oh, I agree. And although I absolutely adore Idris Elba, but it would basically, to me, it would just be continuing Daniel Craig, because he could play suave and debonair.
He's too old,
but he's also really good at that, the fighter, right? And the brutal and the tough. But he's about the same age, I feel like, and it's almost like I feel like they're going to want somebody.
You need somebody like in their 30s.
Yeah. They want them to take the next 4 or 5 movies into their 50s if they can, you know what I mean, instead of starting there.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't want another Roger Moore situation where,
Yeah, when he's actually too old to play the part when he does his first movie.
Right, exactly. Because like those later movies, Octopussy, If You Do Kill, where it's so obvious you see it's more stuntman in wigs than anything else.
What do you mean? Roger Moore did all his own stunts. I don't know what you're talking about.
What? I have to rewatch them now.
So, the James Bond Lexicon is out right now. You can find it at Amazon because that's where I found it. Where else can they locate this, or is that the best
on
place?
Amazon, all the global Amazon sites, and your favorite online bookstore. You can find it there. And if you go to the companion website, jamesbondlexicon.online, where we keep the updates and news of all the Bond stuff that's going on. You can also find a link to the books to many independent online bookstores on our website too. So.
Oh, that's cool.
And you want to share your website if they want to find any of your other work?
Yeah, if more my general writing stuff, you can just follow me at allanjporter.com, and you can find me on Twitter at allanjporter or at Bond Lexicon for the James Bond stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been really exciting. I feel like we could
great.
I have a lot more questions.
We need like another.
I'm happy to come back and talk more geeky stuff. We can.
Definitely.
We didn't even talk Jerry Anderson or.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I got questions about Thunderbirds and Space 1999. He did that one too, right? Space 1999. That was one of his.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I love
I know,
that
and I
show as a
mentioned
kid.
earlier that you wrote for Disney for Cars.
Yeah, we didn't even
and
mention the
didn't talk
comics.
about
I actually
that.
just did one for NASA. If you want to talk about that.
Oh my gosh.
NASA.
Yeah.
And the SLS that still hasn't reached, hasn't done anything.
So.
I do want to be respectful of our podcast listeners' time, and we've had an almost 2-hour show. That was our longest.
Which one was
I
that?
don't remember.
What
I
was
don't
it?
remember. Oh, it was the one. It was one where we read our stories.
Oh, it's a story one.
So we did a writing challenge with some friends
okay.
of ours that have
Cool.
a podcast, and so we wrote some short stories and read them. But yeah, I definitely would like to have you back. I'd love to talk about some of those things. I do want to ask though, before we let you go, what's next? Do you have anything you're working on now? That's
most active thing I'm working on actually is a novel. Like I said, I've done short stories and novellas. I'm actually tackling a full-length novel.
Oh, cool.
Just finished the second draft, and while that's stewing in my drawer, before I do another revision round, I'm working on another noir detective short story. That's out there. But what's probably going to be published next, I've actually got a couple of Western short stories and sword and sorcery short stories that are sitting at various publishers that I'm hoping will see light maybe this year or early next year. So they're already sitting out there. So, yeah.
awesome.
So more in the
Nice.
after all the years of non-fiction into the James Bond lexicon and getting that out, I'm more in a fiction frame of mind at the
I
moment.
hear you.
Yeah.
And your
wrong with that.
socials, where can they follow you?
Like I said, on Twitter, you can get me at Allan J. Porter, or just through the website, allanjporter.com, and you can follow me there. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. We appreciate it. It's been great.
It's been wonderful to talk to you guys. I apologize
Yeah.
for the lighting thing. We will.
Oh, don't worry about it. Like I said, our
not at all.
podcast listeners had no idea that was happening, except that I'm talking about it right now. And I don't edit anything out. I just let them have everything. You get the raw, unedited.
You get the raw.
The
fun.
podcast listeners experience everything we experience. We want that.
This podcast is really real.
It
It
isn't.
is
It has
real, yeah.
nothing to do
Oh,
with me being
thank you.
too
By the
lazy
way,
to
yes,
edit.
I must plug the podcast. Otherwise, my other co-host
Yes,
will
please
tell
do.
me off. James Bond Podcast Network on Her Majesty's Secret Podcast. We do 3 shows. We do a movie reviews and movie rankings. We're actually going back through the movies for a second time, marking and ranking various aspects of the movies.
Nice.
I do a music show, James Bond 6 of the Best, where we've done all the soundtracks, and we're now basically doing all the James Bond spin-off cover albums that we can find. We're going through those.
Cover albums. Oh, how fun.
And we also have Rogue Agents, where we have 5 of us, and we dip into basically anything Bond: comics, short stories. Talked about The Man from U.N.C.L.E.,
Yeah.
Daffy Duck, Donald Duck, Bond spoofs. I mean, anything Bond related at all, we just do on that show. So we have 3 main shows. So if you like Bond stuff, you want to geek out on Bond stuff, on the On Her Majesty's Secret Podcast Network. You can
Nice.
find us on your favorite podcast platform. So.
Do you mention Jimmy Bond at all?
Which Jimmy Bond?
Oh, that's true. There, yeah.
Yes, we have talked about some of
That's
those.
true.
We've talked about Casino Royale '67. We've talked about OK Connery.
David Niven.
David Niven. We've talked about the Casino Royale TV show. So yes,
That's fun.
Excellent.
Yeah, we didn't even dig into all that like really deep Bond noir, but that's what their show's for. That's we give them the tease. If you really want to dig deep into James Bond, now you know where to go do it. On Her Majesty's Secret.
I was just listening earlier. Like I said, I was listening to the episode where you guys are ranking the Bond vehicles at the Peterson Museum, and that's a great episode. Love the insights. Love the insights.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Make sure you go to our website. Like I said, www.world. You don't even need the www anymore. I don't know why people still say that. You just go to worldgonegeek.com. That's 3 letters you don't need to waste your time with, right? Like you've got things, you got shows to binge, you've got
audiobooks to listen to.
Yes, and James Bond comic books to seek out and find. You don't have time to type those 3 letters. So just worldgonegeek.com, and you can check out all of our shows, and they're all right there. You can listen to episodes straight from the website. Make sure you go and check that out. And when you do so, click the little chat icon. It should be down in the right-hand corner or up at the top. There's a link to do it as well. But click that little chat icon. It'll give you a chance to record yourself telling us Randy Meek's 3 rules to surviving a horror movie. I need those 3 rules. Leave that message for us. We're going to draw some winners on next week's show and give you a copy of the latest Scream, an actual Blu-ray copy.
Physical media.
To your home address. Yes, that's
you can hold it in your hand.
Yeah, which a lot of people prefer. So, I mean, which I get, right? Because
totally.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So definitely do that. And, good luck. I hope you win. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're at World Gone Geek. Pretty much wherever you decide to socialize on the socials. So follow and become a citizen of a World Gone Geek, where the geek shall inherit the earth. We'll see you next time.
Go watch Moon Knight.
Yeah, I stopped long before the song ended this stuff. Usually I'm trying to get into it, and there we go. It's over now.
Go watch
Bye.
Moon Knight.